Hey.
Or magic.
Hope you're listening to something.
Conversation that
You listen to Lex Friedman?
Lex Friedman?
Yeah.
No.
I
AI
like
scientist?
Huh? Yeah, but yeah, he's kind of like his conversations are kind of similar to the conversations that Joe Rogan has, where they're very long. The difference is his podcast platform, where his conversations are very technical and philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's times where I'll fall asleep to conversations on there, and also when I wake up in the morning, I'll start writing code as I'm listening in to conversations that he's having. I recommend him, man. I like him. It's he doesn't really have a polarizing attitude towards things that are I'm losing my vocabulary. Confrontational. It's not confrontational.
Controversial.
Controversial. There's so many words in the English language, man. It's hard for me to keep up.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not polarizing. He kind of removes. He doesn't really judge. He just talks, which is kind of different because me, like, I always have my opinion that may be say that word again.
Controversial.
Controversial. I keep wanting to say confrontational. All right, controversial. All right.
I'm sure they're probably synonymous.
Yeah, I mean they're different, but yeah.
But yeah, so he's a bit like Joe Rogan then, in that
the platform, yes, but Joe Rogan is a spectrum of conversation topics.
Mm-hmm.
Some are philosophical, some are comedy.
Yeah.
Some are
kind of terms of his
documentary.
Yeah, but in terms of his approach and that if there's controversy, he's in it to have not just prop up a side of an argument or something like that. He's in it to just learn and help other people learn about things. So that's cool. I'll have to listen to some of these and see. Maybe it'd be a good one to fall asleep to.
You don't fall asleep to information?
No, I used to like listen to the radio and stuff when I would fall asleep, but when I got married, my wife wants a dead silence, so.
You don't put on the earbuds? I mean, I'll put on earbuds.
No, I remember though growing up, I used to have a radio and I had a wire set of headphones that I would listen to the local radio station to fall asleep. I'd fall asleep and I'd forget, not to fall asleep, but as I was falling asleep or trying to get to sleep. So I'd have these in my ears. And then in the middle of the night, I would roll over and unplug the thing. And then the boombox would start blaring in the middle of the night. And I'd just wake up like, whoa, just flailing, trying to find the way to turn it off. My parents would get so pissed off at that, but it was good times.
No. So are you going to actually commit to learning Elixir? I won't even say learn, to programming with Elixir? Are you committed, or are you just dancing around it?
I'm still in the dancing phase, but part of the trouble with learning something new is you come with all this baggage from where you were, and like it's difficult to. Like, you want to be productive so quickly because you can just do this in another language so quickly. Mm-hmm. It's hard to go back to, walking when you're able to run somewhere else, if that makes sense. But, one of the things about Elixir that's a bit more compelling is that the actual platform has got capabilities that I think there's some replication in the .NET world, but there's some compelling use cases and capabilities around distributed and scalable systems and things like real-time websites and chat updates and stuff like that. So and then just making resilient systems with the whole supervisor patterns and stuff. Do you know, have you looked at Akka.net much?
Yeah.
Do you know if that's that's effectively trying to replicate the patterns that are in Erlang? Is that do you think that's a fair assessment? 'Cause it's agents with supervisors, right?
So Raul is he messages me periodically. I feel like we're developing a friendship. He's in I think he's in Tijuana, and so he programs in Elixir, and I think he tries to give talks in Elixir at the local within the local communities.
Yeah.
So I would tap him if you have any questions or request some material. He specifically, I think he's not working on it, but I think he's currently learning some type of specification library for Elixir that's similar to Closure Spec for Closure. I think it was called Dialyzer or something, or maybe it's something new, but I would hit him up. Like, again, him and I trade messages like weekly because he listens to this mastermind stuff, and so he usually feeds me comments on Twitter or messages me on Twitter about his thoughts or have I considered certain things. All right, I didn't mean to ignore your question. What was your question again?
I was just wondering if those the like Akka.net or I think it's Orleans, Microsoft Orleans, if those are basically trying to accomplish the same architecture as what's built into the Erlang OTP.
So I don't really know about Erlang OTP, but in regards to Akka, for Akka.net, I thought it was built by Aaron Stannard. I think Stannard is his last name. I think he recently had a birthday a week ago. I think he's like 35 or whatever. Hella brilliant. Listening to him talk, I struggle to keep up with what he's expressing because he's like on another level of intelligence. But in regards to Akka, so Akka I thought was the JVM.
No, well, I think there is a JVM, but there's also a .NET version of it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is Akka.net was a port of the Java implementation.
Sure.
And if the question is were they inspired by Erlang, probably was. I'm not sure. I've had a project in which I had to use Akka.net. But when I was building out that part of the system, it was more of kind of a elastic, like spawning of nodes. It had nothing to do with a supervisor and kill your children and then just spawn up a new one. The type of work that I was doing had nothing to do with the resilience of keeping something up, and it had everything to do with performance of if I need more resources, then spin something up. But it had nothing to do with killing.
There are supervisors within Akka, so I think looking at the page for it and stuff, I'm guessing that I'm fairly accurate in thinking that these two, like what's built into Erlang is what's trying to be achieved through Akka, or like I said, Microsoft Orleans. So
Well, Elixir is built on top of Erlang,
yeah,
so hopefully you don't have to write that much code if the
no,
language is catered towards that particular space.
yeah. To do that particular stuff, it's built in. You still got to obviously write your code, but it seems fairly good. You know, I'm not totally biased against strongly or dynamically typed languages, but I definitely think
yeah.
there'd be. Yeah. You know what you should do is write a strongly typed language on top of Erlang and become and then make $1 million consulting for it.
No, the next language I'm going to learn is Clojure. I've already committed to it. It's just I won't learn Clojure until I finish my food delivery app.
No, I see. Well, it says you should write your own language on top of it,
Oh, okay.
and then you could call it Bismonger script or something like that.
I wrote a compiler in Visual Basic when I was in college.
Yeah, I wanted to take a compiler class, but it didn't align with my schedule. I think that would have been fun.
It was a lot of code. I think I had like 40 pages of code. It was a lot. Not 40 lines. It was 40 pages.
Yeah, I've tried sitting down and doing that. Like I'll get through the Lexer parser stuff, but when you start to get into translating into abstract syntax trees and then converting it or writing out whatever that last phase of it is, I have never. That's the piece that's escaping me. Like looking at the files, recognizing and tokens, and running it through some lexical analysis, and then trying to get to the part where I can get the parser to take that information and put it into trees. The trees, just getting that structure right and thinking through that is always problematic.
Do you think that class was useful?
Oh, I didn't get to take a class. Yeah.
Hold up. You went to university, right?
Yeah, but it didn't align with my schedule to have compiler, so I didn't get to take it.
You didn't major in computer science?
No, I did.
You guys weren't forced to take operating systems?
Well, I didn't take operating systems either, but no, we had those, I think. So we had different batches of stuff we had to take. So it's like, pick one from these particular ones. So I took like software engineering, and I took operations research, and I took graphics, and something else. So I didn't take compiler I didn't take theory, and I didn't take compiler theory, and what's the third one? Operating systems. So those are the ones I didn't take. I think there wasn't any other one. So I took event-driven programming as well. Yeah. So, and
what language was event-driven programming?
It was, I think you did VB in that one.
Okay.
So like UI event-driven programming. So based on user events, do things.
My computer science class. Okay, my intro to programming. How does this work? No. It was my data structures and algorithms class, which I think is like, is that like the intro to programming? I think it is.
No, data structure and algorithms. So the classic
level.
Yeah, I think that's a 2000 level. Yeah, or maybe it might be even 3000. I can't remember. The classic computer science core consists of like a CS0 class, which is like a introduction problem solving. I can't remember exactly what it was called at our school, but there's like essentially like an intro class, and then there's CS1, CS2, data structures and algorithms, and then there's it's basically like a computer organization and assembly language. And I think that those, I might be missing one, but I think that's what defines the CS core. And then you have, particular things on top of that. Actually, sorry, CS core also, I believe, includes like a foundations and discrete mathematics. I think it's discrete math.
So why is it that, and this is when I was at Cleveland State. So like, I got my associates in mainframe programming, which it had some intros that transferred over to Cleveland State, I think, at the community college. And then I went to Cleveland State. But like, the majority of my computer science classes were like predominantly Indian, with Asians. I don't really remember too many white people. I'm always the only black person. Was did you have like a similar like makeup percentage wise of like predominantly Indians, some Asians, and then like that one black person?
I think we had maybe one or two foreign students, and then maybe we had someone who's black, not African American, but from Africa.
Nigerian, more likely.
Yeah.
I think the smartest. Yeah.
So like we had, but we were a lot. We're like a smaller regional school, so we're like we get international students, but they weren't as prominent as some of the bigger universities have.
Okay.
So most of my class was most of the people I graduated with, and then around me were white and from Minnesota. That's pretty much how it was. Because I mean, you get a lot from northern Minnesota that go to that school, and then you get a few people from the cities, Twin Cities, and yeah, some Bemidji natives. But when I say natives, I mean natives to the native to this town, not natives.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of natives up there, but I don't think we had any in computer science. So we did have one gal she was in her 50s, and her name's Michelle, and we became good friends, and she ended up coming to work at the same place I did, but she had kind of a long history. She was a felon. She had done check fraud and just had a troubled past, and then she found herself working at a Hardee's. And one day she just decided, you know what, screw this. Something happened, I don't remember. There was some click event, and she went and decided to go to school, and she got her computer science and history degrees, and then she ended up working where I did. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. It's it kind of leads to a discussion of when you're able to demonstrate something that obviously requires a lot of effort and commitment, then maybe you should be taken seriously, regardless of the mistakes that you've made in the past. All right. Yeah. And so, yeah, if you were let's say it, a thief, but then you turned your life around. Well, to turn your life around, what does that really mean? Does that mean that you just magically, I found Jesus, or does it mean that you literally went through a series of experiences that are measurable, that demonstrates that over time you were able to achieve a goal that most people won't voluntarily commit to and stick it out and get through it. So yeah, if I was an employer, like I'm kind of hard on people that have criminal histories, especially if it has to do with victimizing other people. But yeah, if someone has done something that I didn't expect them to do, like what's the probability that someone, given that pass, is able to and with that mentality is able to still go through a computer science curriculum, which most people don't get through, right? They drop out or they swap out their major to psychology or communications. Like, I would respect that. I think she would have more to offer, and she's more motivated than the majority of people, just given what she had to overcome.
Yeah, she had a intense desire to become a DBA. Is where she ended up taking, and I think she is now or is, but she certainly wasn't. She certainly wasn't the you know brightest or the biggest rising star or whatever. But that drive and stuff was definitely there, which is something I always is interesting within the job. And this always drove me nuts. She became kind of like a well, she does all this crappy work, and why am I paid the same as her and stuff like that? And it's like, come on, guys. She's earned her position here, and she does a lot of work that you probably don't see, and she's contributing. So, and she'll make mistakes. Yes, nobody's perfect, but we all have jobs to play and stuff like that. And I hated when people would just let my dog in, so would try to kind of like compare and contrast and say, well, I'm clearly better than this person in terms of skill and what I've contributed. So
no, how do they know what she's making?
Because there's a standard starting at the time, anyways. There's a standard starting wage, and we all knew what that was. And then the raise structure was such that it wasn't really a merit-based thing at the time. So it was generally like we started, then there was like 3 years of really good raises, then like a few years of kind of standard raises, with the idea of getting you up to kind of like industry averages. So for years of service and all that, like they had these formulas. And then at 7 years, you'd become a senior. That's all changed since I left, and I liked that system. At least you knew where you stood. Now they're at the well, you could be here for 30 years and you could never become a senior, and it's like, well, yeah, just because but then it's like a lot of it comes down to perception and how do people perceive people, and it's not looking at necessarily the value that's being given. And yeah,
first impressions, man, that's hard to overcome. Like, we're not designed to let people evolve, right? We look at the same you a month later. We're not designed to recognize your maturity a month later. We still see you, right, from last month. So yeah, it wasn't until I quit my full-time employment gig and started contracting that I self-declared myself a senior, because my company refused to promote me to that level. And they're like, well, Scott, you're not ready. Well, you're not giving me the opportunity to demonstrate, what's on this matrix or what's on this Excel spreadsheet, right? You're not giving me an opportunity to demonstrate those skill sets. That's because you're not ready. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I'm out. So never ask someone permission for how successful you could be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like, it's like if you're, within a job, and let's say you're around someone and they've gained a lot of weight or whatever, they put on a little weight. You don't notice that, and then you don't notice when they lose it, really. Like, but if
Very good point.
But if you're like somebody who's just like, met you one day and said, "Oh, hi," and then you come back later and you're like 3 sizes smaller, it's like, whoa, you're so thin. What's going on? That's like.
Are you on drugs?
Huh? Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I get that one. Usually it's, whoa, how'd you do that? It's called intermittent fasting.
Yeah, they would freak out when I would wear a suit to work. That's how you get people to be on their my vocabulary's left me. That's how you scare people. You come to work in a black suit and tie.
Yeah.
What's going on? Nothing. Why are you dressed up? Fraternity suit, like court case, like.
Yeah, we had a couple guys that would wear suits, not full suits, but they'd wear ties and dress shirts and dockers and stuff to work, for the express purpose of being like, well, we're dressing for the job we want, not the job we have, kind of a thing. So, but
in regards to progress with my mobile app, I spent like 6 hours on the weekend building the event store for Azure. It's almost done. Well, the Azure piece of it, I didn't have to port my code to work with it. I'll try to have that done this weekend.
And you're building on that on top of what are you building that on top of in Azure then? Or are you just, or are you saying that you implemented or set up an event store in Azure?
No, Azure has no concept of an immutable database that I'm aware of. An event store is an immutable database. So behind the scenes, it's still mutable, right? But it's basically me building a library. It's exposed on GitHub. I think it's called I need to rename it because I think it's called Azure.functions.eventstore. But essentially, you point to the endpoint, and then you basically declare your stream, and then you append events to the stream. I don't know if I answered your question. Can you can you rephrase your question differently?
Well, you've got to be storing the data somewheres, right? I was wondering where
Azure storage tables.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, is if you were putting them into storage tables. So how do you keep track of that then? Are you, do you keep like do you store in one particular area or node some sort of log that you have to parse through then, and then all the events get stored into individual
there's
logs or whatever they call it? What's the performance of on that too?
Well, it's a document database, so it's essentially like what I'm gonna try to sound smart and say O of 1 because it's a key value pair, but your how do I say this? I haven't actually stored the guts of it yet. I just did the high level work of explaining what a stream is and what an event is, but I haven't yet wrote the logic and then the integration tests for what it means to append an event to a stream and then to read a stream of events given the stream ID. The events are of type string. Translated, the events are a JSON string, right? That you can deserialize into or hydrate into whatever type that you need.
Mm-hmm.
That's the short answer. But how does it? What does it actually look like when you have a stream table and an events table? I don't know yet. It's your stream is one item, your events is multiple items. It's kind of hard for me to explain that because in regards to the document database of how that's going to be stored, because I haven't wrote it yet. But yeah.
Fair enough. Have you looked at Azure Event Hub at all?
I'm familiar with it. It's the short answer is I'm familiar with it.
Yeah.
I thought Azure Event Hub. I get Azure Event Hub and Azure Grid kind of confused. I think Azure grid was deprecated, and maybe Azure Event Hub is what they're promoting. But I thought that was more for the business model of managing a whole bunch of granular thingamajigs that are continuously posting their state, right? So I thought that Event Hub was synonymous with Internet of Things, in which you have the ability to monitor and throttle the huge volumes of information that's coming to you from a large quantity of publishers. That's what I thought Event Hub was kind of geared towards.
I think that's what it's geared toward. Yeah, it's not the same as what you're talking about with the event store stuff. It's something that I came across a couple weeks ago in doing some research and working with this other contractor on this project, this engagement we're on. But it was kind of my understanding of it is basically you've got a like a pub sub type model with the persistence of messages on the event hub. So you've got people feeding in messages that land into an event hub.
Yeah.
And then they actually store those. And unlike traditional pub sub in like a event bus where once it's delivered they delete it. What they do is they actually maintain the stream, and I don't know if it's indefinitely, or I think it might be based on. It's probably based on some sort of rule set or whatever. But and then anything that connects up new to it can actually get the full event stream.
Yeah,
or whatever.
I thought Event Hub was Microsoft's alternative to Kafka. I thought
it might be,
because I thought Kafka, which I think is like the de facto standard, is meant for handling huge volumes of data. And I thought it was kind of the same type of platform where it's like how do I say this? I have to look it up again because I don't think Kafka is a database. I thought it was just a messaging platform for huge volumes of messages to be processed.
Yeah. I mean, it seems fairly similar. Like trying to draw relationships between, well, what is this in this ecosystem? It's like the conversation earlier about Akka and Erlang and the Erlang OTP. And are these the same thing? It's jumping between ecosystems is rough.
Yeah, I still think developers are underpaid. When you take into consideration doctors and lawyers, the difference is they work in a regulated industry, so the state is holding them accountable, and there's barriers to entry. So you just can't say, "Oh, I'm a lawyer," "Oh, I'm a doctor," right?
Yeah,
you can't do that.
But you can't say that. I mean, teachers are the same though, but you can't say the same about the rates that you get from teachers. Teachers don't get paid very much.
Well, professors arguably get paid.
And maybe Harvard professors and stuff, but
yeah, but the difference, I'm looking up the hourly rate for Apache Kafka. That doesn't look right. It says $48. Where is this? This says payscale.com. So this must be global, right? I wonder what the hourly rate of Kafka in the United States is. Anyway, the difference between so the counterexample with teachers, if you're not a professor, is they tend to, once they learn that content and they have their lesson plan, it's set in stone, and they just every semester they provide the same lesson plan, right? It's from my experience, and I know it depends on the type of subject that they're teaching, but from my experience, once you have your lesson plan written out, you don't reinvent the wheel as a teacher, aka lecturer. You just keep sending out the same content to a different class, different semester, over semester, over semester, over semester. So whether you're a physics teacher, a math teacher, English teacher, like I don't think you're really held accountable for getting up to date on the latest mathematics or getting up to date on the latest grammar for English. It's like once you learn it, that's it.
Yeah. Well, my point is that
Lawyers and doctors, no, it's continuous learning.
yeah, which is part of their professional services, and I think teachers probably, if they're going through a certification, probably have some sort of required upkeep on their on learning or whatever. But and at the university level, there's also a lot of them do research, which helps pay the bills for the university. But the idea here is not so much that it's not just certification that matters. It's other factors. It's what you're doing, and so if we had, and there are professional software certifications if you want to do. Is it IEEE's got one, and I think the ACM might have one, but I don't think we want to go down that path as an industry.
I think we should.
Maybe I could see it. Maybe for certain, security or sorry, safety oriented type things, but for for business software, meh. Like there's not like enough. There's not enough justification for it. Like with lawyers and CPAs, there's like if you mess that up, there's huge consequences.
Well, if you're how about this? If you're a contractor / consultant and you prefer to work corp to corp, which means that you're required to carry, a lot of companies that you work with or that you partner with require you to carry business insurance, then perhaps for the insurance companies that want to insure your business as a requirement for you to do, as a requirement for you to do corp to corp, maybe then they can require you to have a certification. That would make
But why
sense.
would they? All they would be doing is
insurance company it's reducing risk. That's what insurance is.
Yeah, but they're reducing their available pool of stuff, and the risk on that is contracting work is probably pretty low. Like I'm sure their actuaries look at it and go, this is free money. Because like how often are you getting, is your business insurance going to probably have to pay out for contracting services?
Well, it would probably, well, okay.
Yeah.
That's assuming that the more that businesses recognize that IT isn't a department, but IT is actually the core of the business, then maybe there will be more lawsuits when more businesses start getting destroyed because of software glitches. So, like, example is Night Capital. I thought it was Night Capital, right? Isn't that the name of that one company that went out of business overnight? Give me 1 second.
But software isn't the core of a business, though. Technology isn't.
It's not? Okay.
No.
You remove software from the majority of businesses. Are they going to be able to operate?
No, but you could say the same thing about removing people. If you remove people from a business, can it operate? No.
Well, I would argue that you can reduce the scale involved.
If you remove electricity, if you remove electricity, is the business going to be able to operate?
No, it won't.
Probably not.
But okay, we could debate this a little bit further. My argument is that your IT is a utility that the business relies on, and it's not like IT department, accounting. No, I feel like it's the IT department that is the hub for accounting, that is the hub for HR, that is the hub for name another department.
Yeah.
Like I feel like it's the hub. I feel like it revolves. It is the black hole of the ecosystem that money goes into that sometimes doesn't come back out, and everything revolves around it. Maybe black hole is the wrong metaphor, but I feel like it's the neutron star, the magnetar, right? So
yeah, I don't see it as it revolves around it. I think it's more of like enabled it. So, I mean, the nature of software within a business is to multiply the capability of labor. I mean, that's what it is. So, pretty much every function within a for the most part, I mean, within a business context, anyways. So every function that can be achieved within a business generally can be done manually, right? When we're talking about business software. So, you know, I could take my paper, have a paper set where I transfer papers from one area to another, and that's how I do data. Or I could send an email, which is cheaper and much faster and smaller. There's not waste to it. So that's a reduction of cost and a multiplication of labor. It makes humans become super powerful in terms of how productive they can be.
And also, it reduces risk when it comes to errors, right? Theoretically,
yeah, and probably for the most part, even the risks or even the issues you have in business software are probably considerably less than what it would be in a manual sense, right? But what you're trying to do is multiply their labor. So the IT department is really or our function within a business is really about scaling up the business and multiplying the capability, but we're not the core. You know, that's I don't know how to say it. That's like putting a bunch of accessories on an engine to make it more powerful. We're doing that.
So
the core is their actual business process and their whatever, you know, unique selling factor that they have, or a capability that they have that makes them competitive in the marketplace. What's their secret sauce? Otherwise, they're just a commodity. Although speed could be, and then in that case, maybe IT would be a.
So Google is what kind of company?
They are a software company.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't think they are.
Aren't they?
Why would you think Google's a software company? I think Google's an ad company.
Okay.
So I'm trying to bend this debate my way, right, to favor me. But most people would agree. They would say both, right? It's a software company and an ad company. But at its roots, right, at its core, Google makes money off of ads. It makes money off of people, right? Well, everybody makes money off of people, but Google really, really makes people their products, right? And so, like, my argument is, without computing, there would be no Google. But even though Google is an ad company,
what are you talking about? There is if they're an ad company, there's plenty of Googles out there. You ever driven down the highway?
There's billboards. Yeah, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah. You ever opened a newspaper?
It's been a really long time.
Or magazine?
Newspaper, what's that?
Yeah, they're an avenue, right? You're out there looking for something. They're basically the yellow pages, right?
Point taken.
Yeah. They've basically automated an entire industry out of existence, but for the most part with the yellow pages, they basically took that and wiped them out.
Okay, so the last part you said, still supports my argument, because if my argument is, if IT is not the core, right? It's not a department. IT is the core of your business. That's my argument, right?
No,
And,
no, the
and
advertising is the core. The technology, IT made it possible to do that without people.
what my argument, right? I understand what your argument is.
Yeah.
My argument is IT is the core, and you just provided a you just supported my argument by saying that if IT is not at the core of a business, then that business will not be able to adapt in modern times.
Oh yeah, yeah,
With
I'll say that. I don't think they're the core. I think that what I'm trying to say is that the core of the business is whatever they're doing, whatever their mission is, whatever, and that's enabled through people and technology. And what we do as technology is basically to try to reduce the people element or magnify their capabilities to the point where they can do astounding things. It's the multiplication of labor. It's what all technology is, and
Well,
that's not just tech, software tech. That's hardware tech as well. I mean,
I would I would
in
I
general.
would say differently. I would say that technology, design, test, they all have the same thing in common. They all reduce risk. Risk is they would reduce the risk of going out of business when it comes to, well, business, right? So if if IT is the hub, which is my argument, of any company that wants to be sustainable in 2021 moving forward, then they rely on computing to not only reduce errors, right? You reduce errors, you reduce tech support, you reduce humans headcount, and if you reduce people having issues with the product or needing assistance with the product, then that might be proportional to keeping customers and receiving referrals. Like, I don't know, we could debate this all day, but I feel like your computing reduces risk for the business, in which risk can be an overloaded term. But
Yeah, maybe the way we can say this is that that we agree across the board that technology is a driver nowadays, and that it's a vital function, and companies that don't recognize that IT isn't there just to throw crap over the wall and deliver whatever, but they should be part of the business as a driving factor and accelerating growth and stuff like that. Then I wouldn't say that, again, they're the core. I think whatever they're doing is the core, whatever their business model is the core. But in terms of driving that whatever they're trying to do towards success, yeah, that technology is a huge part of that. People and service and stuff like that is also a huge factor when you're dealing with certain industries. But yeah, I think we're probably splitting hairs over some terminology, I'm guessing. But
perhaps
yeah.
my argument is that IT is not a sibling of accounting.
Oh yeah, I'll give you that. Yeah.
But one can argue that, well, Scott, you can't say that, because obviously there's businesses out there in which they are siblings. And then I would rebuttal and say, okay, well, let's see how those businesses compare. If those businesses are not sponsored by the state, how relevant are those businesses that have that business model compared to the businesses that treat IT as its hub or core?
Yeah, I think that there's a case to be made that there is a sibling there when you talk purely about platform services. So when you're not talking about actually, when you're talking about the infrastructure, the operations of IT, I think that they're a department, right? But I think when you're talking about software and what you do on those platforms, in terms of taking your business, what software people generally do, which means taking a business unit and trying to make them hyper efficient, then yeah, we're not. I don't believe that. I actually think software teams should be embedded with business units and be part of those business units and not be separate departments. I think.
So you're supporting what I'm saying now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think they're core, but I do. If we said we take all the concept of whether they're core or not, and we say, should an IT department be this little segregated unit over here and treated as just one vertical? No, they're not. They're not. I think there's a portion of them that is, which is anything to do with platform work or technology work, operations work, where all they're doing is saying, like, we need servers, we need infrastructure, and getting all that, because that you could buy all that stuff and do all that stuff, but it wouldn't help you, right? It's what these software people do that are developing or helping teams to adopt software that's making the difference. And like I said, I think software people should be embedded. Like, you should have your accounting team should be your accounting people, and then you've got some leadership, and then you've got IT, their software unit that's responsible for making sure that they're doing things in a hyper productive way, which is basically to multiply the labor. Yeah.
I haven't heard that term before.
I don't know.
I'm gonna start using it though.
To really, like I said, it's to magnify or multiply the capability of the labor within that department. So if you've got accounting is kind of probably a bad one because they're pretty well fixed, but if you have a purchasing department that could be more efficient at it, you should have problem solvers in there that can write software, but also analyze the problem, and and that shouldn't be some department. They should be aligned and embedded. They shouldn't be like, it should never, the company, like the groups shouldn't have to within a business shouldn't have to try to fight over the resources of an IT department. So the resources, when I say resources, I mean people in the IT department. So, and I think a lot of businesses are moving that way, with product teams and product focused development internally. And that's, I think, but my recommendation for companies is to make sure there's alignment, because there's a lot of waste in just being like, hey, grab some random people and then software people and try to get them to deliver something that you may or may not need. It'd be better if your software people knew what your business model was and could have conversations and suggest alternatives and then deliver what you actually need to maximize your capabilities. So
it's just hard, and you might be able to spit out immediately counter examples, but it's just hard to think of companies that are dominating their space that are not confused with a technology company. So, for example, Apple, Netflix, Amazon. Like, to me, they all dominate their space. Now, one would say Apple and Android. Apple doesn't really dominate Android. It's literally like two device manufacturers, right? Like, what outside of technology companies, right, in which computing is at the core of the business model that they have, and it's not run by the state. Like, what are counterexamples of companies that are not recognized as technology companies that dominate their space, where there is like very few competitors? Okay, cartels, one, like drug cartels, right? Outside of that, is it oil?
Yeah, pharmaceuticals.
Well, I would argue that can one argue that oil is again run by the state in some way due to
No.
corruption? No, you don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you've
You don't-
got
okay.
multiple companies, but it's highly regulated for sure. It's not like software is not regulated too much. But yeah, but you could say pharmaceuticals. They're a lot of these companies are protected by the regulations in some way because it's the barrier of entry to get a competitor into them is really really high. But yeah,
Okay.
so I think you could say the same thing about so
So
like
it's
you
not
said,
free enterprise.
power or energy. You could take pretty much every vertical, right? Pharmaceuticals and gosh, I had another one in my head.
Well, what's another example? Let me rephrase it.
Ag.
Are there counterexamples to organizations or companies that are not regulated by the state that in which technology is not at their hub and they dominate their space?
Well, just about everything is regulated by the state. So, um, like I said, agriculture is regulated, but that's something where there's technology and stuff, but um,
Clothing companies,
yeah, clothing,
furniture
textiles,
stores, like I mean, I don't know.
retail distribution, manufacturing. I mean, there isn't like a dominated. Like I can't think of a manufacturing that dominates. There's a country that dominates in manufacturing, but
Well, so with manufacturing, if we're talking about assembly lines, you have programmable logic controllers.
yeah,
That would be Siemens, Honeywell, and Allen Bradley. I'm not
yeah,
aware of any other players, right?
yeah. But the thing is, there's conglomerates in every vertical, right? For the most part, and tech's got its conglomerates now. Microsoft and Google and Apple and these companies, Salesforce, they all buy and acquire these smaller companies, and they're building up their conglomerate nature. Think of like even in like recreational vehicles, like there's Yamaha as a conglomerate, Textron, a conglomerate, Polaris, conglomerate. I mean, they acquire themselves into the state where they dominate their industry alongside of some one or two other people who can do the exact same thing, who have the capital to and the means and capabilities to acquire and build on that acquisition. So it's like we're constantly feeding up into these companies by starting small businesses that compete or do some new innovation and then build up. Sorry about that. My daughter's singing by. So
No, we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you won this debate. Well,
I think we're saying a lot of the same things though. But yeah, I don't know. So I need to learn me some Elixir anyways.
are you going to commit?
I'll commit when I think of a decent project. You know what the problem is every decent project that I can think of has a huge JavaScript component to it that I don't want to do.
I'll say right it.
I just want to write like and the other thing that's hard about it is like I really want to fiddle with something that could be highly distributed, but how can you do that unless you get volume? Like you have to have something that can have volume to actually see if you're successful at it. There's no way to test whether you're going to be successful at a highly distributed system until you have, organic traffic.
The stock market, the weather.
Yeah.
Um,
Beach delivery apps. I'll just have to write a better beach delivery. I'm just going to steal all your ideas.
Good luck.
I've come to the conclusion too that I don't like microservices. So, no, I'm just kidding. I think that there's value there, but
I think there's value in how they're implemented well.
Yeah. Yeah.
It still tickles me whenever I see job descriptions for seeking microservices developer, and I just okay. And I want to know how they interview for that. Like, I want to know the interview questions. I can guarantee you that domain-driven design isn't going to come up in the conversation. I can guarantee you that they're going to be discussing REST as the only protocol, even if the services are within the business itself is not going out to anything external. REST is still going to be the de facto without people arguing, does it really need to be? And what are the disadvantages for having it? Like, I really want to know what the interview is like for a microservices developer. And if the person interviewing knows what they're even talking about.
Go interview for one.
I will. I'll put a really low bid on it. I'll say $30 an hour. I'm the technical authority of microservices in the state of Florida.
You know what you should just do is go and any job that you don't think you'd normally want to do, go put out bids on it anyways for like a really high value dollar amount. And just fish.
I said this last mastermind.
Yeah.
You were kind of like down on it, like, oh, you're.
No, I said don't go and interview just trying to go off on people.
Oh.
But if you're serious, like you would do the job, then do it. It's fine. I wouldn't do it, record it, and put it online though, because that's where the bit becomes hairy.
So just start lowballing my hourly rate just so I can get the interviews, so I can see what these interviews are like.
Yeah, well, just do that with the companies you don't want to work for, so you can get all the questions in and then go from there.
You know what's annoying is you see a job description and you really want you're really interested in that job, and so you apply. You send your application, your resume, and they're interested until they find out your hourly rate, right? Or they're interested, but they want you to take an assessment test. You're like, F that. You're not part of FANG. What's FANG? Facebook, Apple,
Netflix,
Google. Like, you're not part of FANG. I'm not trying out for you. Who are you? Why? I'm Scott Nimrod. Why would I be trying out for you, right? If you're not FANG, right? So you say, F that. And so, but you're really interested because they're like hiring for, I don't know, using some tools that you really would enjoy using. And then how often do you observe that these companies, they have like these ridiculous, I would say ridiculous ceremonies to actually be interviewed and I don't know, hired by them. And so you see like literally every 2 to 3 months, them always hiring for the same position over and over again. But they may pay a really low rate or they may have outrageous requirements. And like, do you ever observe that? Or do you ever pay attention to it? Because there's a couple companies that I've been paying attention to. One of which was Polaris that I saw for a Xamarin developer. Another one was it's called Spectrum Charter One Spectrum or something like that in Colorado. They're always hiring for the same position. They always have a backfill. They always go through their developers, right? You haven't found anything like that or observed?
I don't have my fingers on the pulse of that much. I mean, I've noticed similar job postings over the course of while I was looking this summer and everything pop up every couple months or something like that for the same company.
Yeah.
But usually it's industries that I feel like they would have difficulty, attracting workers maybe. So I just don't know if they didn't fill the positions or what. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's time. I'm tapping out. It's figure out what you're going to build. I told you the weather and stock tickers, that's continuous data trickling in all the time. I'm not sure of what other examples are there. There's people playing online games in which there's APIs that are exposed for the activity that's going on. That's always going to be trickling in.
Yeah, I've thought about building a Slack clone or doing something like a streaming app like this, at least to deal with the real time, because like one of the other compelling cases is not just the distributed stuff, but is the real time real time apps concept or whatever. So like they've got pretty good facilities in there for opening WebSockets and pushing information to a client. And having presence and stuff like that. So like, I don't know, doing video conferencing or like a chat client type thing is kind of in that ballpark, or voice or whatever.
I wonder if building a clone of Gremlin or something like that is somewhat related.
Gremlin? Not familiar with Gremlin.
I think Gremlin is a chaos engineering tool. So basically, you heard of like Chaos Monkey and Chaos Squirrel, stuff like that. I think it's a framework or something, or a piece of software that disconnects and reroutes and stuff like that. I'm curious if that would be in the same space for using Elixir or Erlang.
Could be. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that people build with it. It's because it started with the telecom industry, so it's like it'd be kind of cool to. The other thing I really want to do is try to understand how you can do zero downtime deployments with it.
You mean hot swapping?
Kind of, I think. So you've got, let's say 3 nodes running in production, and you've got your new release that needs to go out, and bringing it down such that you have no service outage between any of them, and not just doing it by shutting one node down and then. Like you obviously have to take it out of the pool. And so I wonder what that looks like, because I hear about zero downtime deployments and stuff like that. Maybe that is it. But like that's really interesting. But the thing I can't understand is, let's say you've got 5 people connected to node 1. How do you write the software to make sure that those 5 people fail over, or do you have to do that in your or do you do that in your client code? I suppose. But I don't know. Or maybe it is just hot code swapping. I don't know. Man, I got to figure this stuff out. I want to figure it out because it
sounds like a huge paradigm shift.
I just think there's a lot of compelling use cases with this stuff, and it's like I want to, like, one thing that's kind of getting, because I actually get a little bit excited and nerding out about some of this. So, like, I'm looking for a problem to apply it to so I can do this stuff. But I feel like I want to write, if I'm going to take the time to build out some sort of software, I want it to be something that could be used.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I remember talking to a recruiter in Nashville, and they were saying that Elixir is hot in that area.
Yeah, well, it's used by a fair amount of companies that are dealing with anything to do with communication, real-time communications, and it's not even on the TIO. Like, Elixir isn't even on the TIO top whatever index for languages. So the amount of developers that are doing it are pretty low. But
is there a country that has more Elixir developers compared to others? So, like, for example, F# is a lot more common in European countries than the United States. Like, I'm curious if Elixir is similar.
Don't know. I am not sure. I don't even know how you'd figure that out.
The author of Elixir was, I thought is he Brazilian, or it was Jose Valim or something like that, right?
Yeah. I don't know if he was or if he was American.
I know he has an accent. I don't know where he's from. But yeah, I wonder like which countries or continents employ the most Elixir developers.
Yeah, I don't know. I know some, like I was looking at the who's using it kind of pages out there, or it might have been a aggregate. I don't think they have it on their main page, but
I used to listen to Elixir Fountain. Have you listened to that before?
no.
Yeah, I used to listen to that, but he stopped recording it. But it has like hella episodes on it. I'll send you a
Discord
link.
uses it. There's people in the gaming space that use it. Discord is the big one. Do you use Discord for gaming before?
No, I downloaded it and I got confused, so I uninstalled it.
It's like Slack, but it's actually just, I think it's a superior product to Slack because
It's audio, right?
yeah, I don't know if they have video or not, but yeah. So like in the gaming world, there was people used to use TeamSpeak and Mumble and these kind of tools to do talking while they were gaming, and Discord kind of took over that space, and then it became also like a community hub. So it's got like Slack. You go into Slack, you've got chat rooms and stuff like that, channels and stuff. All that stuff, it is all in Discord. So they just went after the instead of going after the business market right away, they went after the customer market, and they were really successful with it. So I think, anyways, but
I'll learn it, and then you can talk about it within a couple weeks. And hell, maybe you will motivate me to. Well, no, I was gonna say pick up Clojure soon. How come you don't want to pick up Clojure, man? Everybody's doing it.
I don't want to do anything on the JVM. To be honest, anything, the Java ecosystem in general, or anything around Oracle,
dominate the world.
I
hate it. 3.3 billion devices.
Yeah, no, I can't stand that ecosystem. It's they're it feels like everything you do in that ecosystem is on hard mode. Like they do a lot of stuff with configuration and blah blah blah, and it's just every time I get into anything Oracle related, it's I feel just disgusted.
Okay.
So like Scala is in that realm.
Scala,
whatever. Scala is in that realm, right?
We took over because I
Yeah.
hate when people say Scala. I'm like, what the?
Yeah, but Elixir Erlang, different ecosystem. Fine with that. I could probably learn Haskell.
Good luck.
F#, obviously.
I mean, you could probably learn Haskell, but I got into trouble just trying to figure out how to install the ecosystem just for me to write code. I couldn't do it. I failed.
Yeah. I'm not saying I would learn, but I hear it's valuable to learn. So just looking at the languages, I mean, JavaScript, obviously I've learned that. I don't think I'd ever go into Ruby. Because they're like I've tried running Ruby before, and the case for it's not very, like the setup on Windows is not very good.
I don't think Ruby's sexy anymore. Ruby's old. Elixir was the next generation of Ruby. I think some people argue.
Well, they took the guy came from a Ruby background, and he took some of the niceties of it and brought it into Erlang, which made it palatable. Python, obviously, I've written that ecosystem. I'm fine with. And I don't know.
You refuse F#.
Rust. I'd learn Rust. Same thing. But anything on the JVM, I just I have a bias against.
Why not F#?
I'd learn F#. Huh?
Because there's no jobs.
No, there's jobs in F#. Just
yeah, if you're the architect or lead.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, that's the only reason. Honestly, that's the only reason I get away with writing F# code for work is because I have influence over it.
Yeah, I mean, like I look at the is it the TIOB index or whatever for languages, and F# not even on it. Neither is Elixir. Scala is though.
Yeah, but some people argue that there's just object-oriented programmers that write object-oriented Scala because it's not philosophical enough or opinionated enough, supposedly. I don't know about Scala 3, but
yeah.
No, you should pick up F#, man, and then you could start code reviewing all that crap that I put on GitHub, and man, you could do a whole like YouTube channel just on like trolling my code, trolling my repos.
I don't think it's far enough away from C# though to get the effect of feeling like it changes my mind, like by the way I think.
Mine. I mean, obviously we're different people, but it changed mine. Like the only reason why I mention it is because you don't have to relearn an entire ecosystem. That could be overwhelming to get started. So like with Haskell, like I didn't know how to just install the setup just so I could start writing Hello World. I just want to get to Hello World.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get to that point because it was too complicated for me to understand what I'm supposed to install, how am I supposed to install it, the configuration I'm supposed to have. Like I just want to point and click. At least with F#, you just point and click.
Yeah,
and
Elixir
does it for you.
Elixir was pretty easy to set up. Like it feels very similar to, but cleaner, but similar to like the JavaScript, modern JavaScript ecosystem in terms of it's a command line tool you run and it generates projects, or like the .NET command line CLI stuff. You do mix is their tool. You do mix new project name. You can pass a thing to make it they have these things called umbrella projects, which are basically solutions. And then they've got application projects, which are projects in .NET world. So like I can, around their ecosystem, I can make a lot of relationships. So their web framework in Elixir is called Phoenix. And they have a thing called plugs.
What is the Beam
that it's built on? Beam is my understanding is that it's the Erlang like runtime or VM.
Okay.
So it's like it's at the bottom label. Was it Ericsson's runtime or whatever? The company Ericsson came up with it. But it's essentially the VM. So you've got the operating system. Beam sits on top of that, and then I believe it's like OTP and whatever on top of that. I don't know how the layers go, but it's basically the runtime.
Okay.
I'm guessing it's like it would be equatable to the JVM or CLI or whatever, or not CLI, CLR. So
that sounds like you did your research.
Yeah, I've been watching a lot of videos this week, and I wrote FizzBuzz, and I've done a couple Hello Worlds in there in using Phoenix, and just mess around. They also have so Phoenix has this thing called live something. I can't remember what it is. The second half of what it was called is live view, which sounds a lot to me like what Blazor was before they got prior to WebAssembly. So I think what they do is they do server-side rendering, but then they send the updates to the updated. I'm guessing what they're doing is they're sending the updated HTML to the client to then refresh the page. Is I'm guessing how this all works. I don't really know. I haven't looked enough under the hood, but I'm imagining
how this Elixir works.
How Phoenix Elixir. Okay. So Elixir's the language. Phoenix is their web framework, so it's like ASP.NET. And then LiveView is kind of like non-WebAssembly Blazor is what I'm guessing it is.
Okay.
So they have a templating language. They render everything server side, and then I believe they either send the deltas or they send the HTML changes down to the client, I'm guessing through their WebSocket, and I'm guessing that's what they use then to actually render the page. So you can basically do pretty nice web apps without actually having to do without page posts. So it feels like a spa, but you don't actually have to do JavaScript with it. So, and the demos I watched of the guy, he was doing it on hotel Wi-Fi and from a server who knows where it was hosted, and it felt like it was pretty responsive. Like you couldn't tell that it wasn't there. It's not like a page post where you're posting and then there's a delay and all that. It felt really fluid, like a spa would. So I don't know. It's kind of an interesting.
Sounds like you're committed to it now.
Yeah, it's pretty. I mean, like I said, it's pretty cool stuff. I don't know. Like everything I've ever done in this realm, it's always come down to, all right, I've got a general understanding of what to do. Now I need something to actually learn it, and that's where I get stuck because I can't decide on what to do. So.
And it appears that it's only a server-side language, right?
Yeah, it is only a server-side language. I think that there might be a. No. There's an Elm to Elixir compiler someone wrote, but there might be some I think there might be a transpiler to JavaScript though somewhere's out there. But yeah, the biggest thing though is it is definitely not it's a dynamic language, but they do have specs and stuff like that. They do have some stuff that help define boundaries. So they have these things called behaviors that kind of act like interfaces, which seems like it would be good enough to separate out business logic from whatever. And there are type specs where you can define types and
dialyzer.
Yeah, they make commenting like a first-class citizen. So you can, it's kind of like providing a Java doc type thing or a JavaScript doc or whatever. So you can document the ins and outs of it, even though it's dynamic. At least from a documentation perspective, you can see what the expectations are. And I think there are some ways there's things like guards built in so that you can, with pattern matching or whatever, you can guard against invalid types coming into certain methods or functions rather, not methods. So you can say like this, this function when this is true about the things, and then do type checks, and so that when is the guards on it, and then you can have like a default match case that would within the function that would say, okay, you've provided some invalid data here or whatever. So there's a lot of, it seems like it's kind of interesting too is that so the data types are immutable, but the way that you write it, like the variables aren't. So like there isn't actually assignment per se. The equals sign is actually a match operator. And what it does is it tries to match like the I can't remember what the term is, the expression on the right or the pattern on the right to the thing on the left. And if it doesn't identify on the left, and if it doesn't match it, it assigns it. And so you like you can do, but the data types are immutable. So once you define a data type, you can't modify it. But you can reassign it to different variables so that they don't have constant variables like other languages do. It's I don't know, different way of thinking.
Well, hold I'm confused. A data type is always immutable because it's only a data type.
Sorry. Like so if you create like a structure, you can't modify the contents of the structure.
Okay.
I think. Although I don't know.
You just create copies of it,
Yeah,
and you update the value of the copied property.
yeah, it must do that behind the scenes. I haven't explored it enough because I mean, a lot of the stuff talks about immutability, but I haven't seen it demonstrated well. How that immutability plays into the, because you can do on a struct, you can say, hey, set the value here. But I wonder if you then, yeah, you probably have to reassign back into the variable to get that new version. So it is probably all immutable. It's just like I said, it's not as in your face as what other languages make immutability, or when you talk about it, it seems like less of a talking point than I see in other languages.
It would have to be because it's built for telecom, so it's built for concurrency, right?
Yeah. But it is kind of their node library too. And that thing, like you can just say, hey, like dispatch this to some other node, and it like the frickin' the OTP or the infrastructure below it just knows what to do. So you could say, hey, here's the other node is over here. So like you can register that up, and once they're connected, you could be like, hey, I want you to run this particular task, but I want you to run it on this node over here, and it'll go off and poof, send it over there.
That doesn't sound like it's part of the core library, though.
It is.
Like, that doesn't sound like it's part of the core language. That sounds like a feature, like an extension. That's part of the core language.
Well, it's not part of the language, but it's part of the runtime. Yeah, so it's like, .NET's got a bunch of stuff in the runtime. This stuff is all part of the runtime, so it knows natively about communicating with other nodes and how to dispatch and communicate back and forth between them. And so you can start up a cluster pretty easily without much issue. And
so if I was hired to build as a back-end developer, and I'm graded on, oh Scott, this is a mission critical system. This cannot go down. This goes down, we're taking you to court, buddy. Right? Then I wouldn't
take the job, but
I would default to Elixir for it being resilient, right? By default. Or no? Is that an accurate
Yeah, that's kind of the I mean, that's the thing of it, is that with the Erlang was written to be, all up all the time, because in the telecom industry, downtime wasn't really an option. Like they have to have everything up and running all the time. And so part of that is, that's kind of informed or whatever the runtime. So they have things like supervisors. So when you start up, you have a lot of processes which are not operating system processes, but kind of like green threads or whatever. They're just lightweight within the process. And you define a supervisor to watch over them within it. And so if you have something in there that blows up, for whatever reason, because, shit happens, the supervisor has a strategy that says, okay, well, that went down, I'll just restart that for you. Because a lot of times, if you think about it, what's the easiest way to fix someone's problem in technology? Turn it on and off again. It's exactly what's built into that,
okay.
thing. And you can specify how to do that. So you could tell the supervisor, okay, well, if this node fails, or this process fails, well, then I want you to restart all of the things you're supervising. Or if this fails, just restart that one. Or whatever. And there's a lot of configurations you can do with it. But the idea there is that when crap does happen, it doesn't just go down and stay down. It goes down and then gets restarted up via these supervisors, which makes it so that in general you have uptime and availability, and that's what you're focused on. So I guess it's part of the mantra is within the Elixir and Erlang space is to let those things fail and depend on the system to restart them, but then go learn why they failed and everything like that. So, because normally software runs just fine. It's just when it hits those hiccups and it doesn't know what to do, it blows up, and then you're out in the woods for downtime unless you have the guy on the phone in the middle of the night restart the damn thing. So, yeah. One thing I don't like about them is that they at least a lot of the they don't play a lot into the they do have exceptions and stuff for control flow, which I like. They don't seem to promote the usage of it, which is good, but you know, as a core part of the library, there's a lot of that stuff in there. And
you said control flow. You talking about pattern match? Like, what are we talking about?
Like so like raising exceptions, raising issues, errors, and then catching them later on.
Does it support exceptions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it almost seems like there's two varieties too. I haven't really understood that part yet, because you can raise something, or you can, I think there was like a raise or throw or whatever. But you know, a lot of it, the advice is to obviously not do that and to actually just pass back records with you know, success or error result records, basically. So, which is used a lot. If you look at the idiomatic nature of Elixir, you know, they're always sending back, in a lot of cases, like an atom that's like okay, and then some value, or error and some value as the response types. And you can just pattern match on, did I get back an okay atom or an error atom as the first, you know, member, and then take your action based on that. So I don't know, it's pretty cool stuff. So I looked at it enough. I just want something where I actually learn how to really do it. So run way over. But,
yeah. All right. Well, good stuff. Message me when you figure out what your project is going to be. It sounds like you already did a Hello World. So
yeah, I did FizzBuzz too, just to make sure I could.
Do you think you have it in you to do the Game of Life?
I've never done the Game of Life in any language, so maybe I should do that.
I'm sure. I'm almost positive they have an Elixir implementation of it, but
yeah.
Of course, that will require a client in order to view it.
Yeah. I suppose you could do it through Phoenix and do a web thing. I've actually thought about trying to actually just wire up through. Is they have a ports what they call ports library within it, which you can launch external processes, and then you push and pull data in through STD, you know, in and out. And so presumably I could actually write like a UI in .NET and then just push in some sort of commands on which to update the UI on it, so that I could do the visualization, but the core logic would be in this other thing. So
it's kind of overkill for something that could just be on the client, but yeah.
I know, but it'd be so fucking cool. No. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll catch up.
Cool.
And, thanks.
Yep.
So,
have a good week.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Bye.